All right, guys, this is pre-AP Biology. This is our recorded video for, I believe it is September 28th and 29th. So this is our last week of full virtual learning because starting next Monday, we should be back in the classroom with some of y'all at least. So we'll see how that changes over the week, and I will send out any information that I do happen to get. So let's see what our goal is for today. We're getting closer to the end of the ecology unit. So there we are, September 28th and 29th. Let's zoom in on that a little bit, make it a little bit easier to see. And we are right here. So our goal with the video today is going to be our vocab list 3. And then we're going to go over some notes on community ecology. So we only have 2 levels of ecology left. There will be community ecology today and ecosystem ecology on Wednesday and Thursday. And then we do take the test on Friday. And now you guys should all be familiar with how I'm planning on doing assessments. As long as school is going like this, it'll just be similar to that, but a little bit longer. More multiple choice, more vocab, and more free response. And so maybe like twice as long as that. So still, it's only about 20 to 25 minutes, I would think, to complete the test. So, all right. Let's see. So in the synchronous one, we are going to, this afternoon, we are going to go over the quiz questions. The quiz was a few days ago for y'all now. The grades should be back with you by the time we're doing this. And there was a lot of good stuff on the quiz and a whole lot of people with that free response question that really need some help on how to read a free response question and how to answer a free response question. And that's what the synchronous time is for, because I can't answer questions if you guys aren't there. So my suggestion to everybody is come see me during the synchronous time. Let's take a look at your quiz grades and let's talk about specifically answering the question that is asked, because that's what I tell all of even my AP students, I tell that. We'll get our vocab examples, which all of y'all hopefully are also realizing would be nice to help you on the quiz, because I do put a lot of vocab on the quiz, and I'm not getting a lot of people coming in and helping with the vocab examples in the synchronous time. So come see me, and plus there's extra credit available. And so we can also, you can get some help on the lab that we're going to talk about today, the virtual lab, which is kind of like it's virtual, but you might actually be using something, so like materials. And the assignment is a 100-point virtual lab. It's on a technique called random sampling, and it also has these questions that come from a document that's called POGIL. It's Guided Inquiry Learning. But I like the questions that they ask, and so I've used a couple of those. Our goal for today, the question we're trying to answer, in an example of competition, if species A competes, misspelling there, competes with species B, predict the effect on species A population if species B is removed or is lessened in any way. So we're trying to see how these community interactions can affect populations. That's our goal. The note to you guys, we're nearing the end of Unit 1 Ecology, which means we're getting close to a test. But before that, we have a few lab activities that can help you learn more about ecology. So let's do that. All right, next up on our list is the vocab. Okay, so we have list 4. I think, no, I need to renumber that one because I'm changing the order every year. So this is list 3. These are more ecology terms, and so you guys have sim, para, co, prim, cycle, hydra, geo, chem, and per or peer. Okay, so remember, if you have done this and forgotten, or haven't done this because for whatever reason you're not doing what I ask you to do in the videos, the vocab, the definitions that you guys look up are found in the vocabulary topic. It's always right underneath the attendance sheet. It will be all year long, and there's your definitions right there. Okay, I do see that one person has turned it in. Don't feel the need to turn it in, although at the end of the 6 weeks, I might give extra credit for those who have completed the vocab. If anybody's gonna send me an email asking, when do I get my extra credit? You get your extra credit by doing the work that is assigned. So do that and fill in the definitions page right there. So again, I'm not gonna go over all the definitions with you guys. What we can do is get our examples from you guys, and that's where I offer some extra credit. I need to do that during the synchronous time. So come see me then. You are free to, of course, get your own examples, but you do need the definitions and examples right there. So, all right, moving on to community ecology here. It's not a super long one. It's a little faster to go through this when we're doing it in this format. Let's see. Nope, I'm gonna close that, reset. Close that. All right, there it is. All right, community ecology is what we're talking about. And so as we move up like one level in ecology, we need to define it first. It's the study of the interactions that take place between species living together within an environment. So we're one level up from population ecology. Now the populations are interacting. And this is the picture we drew at the beginning where we had the organism ecology, the yellow jacket, the population ecology, the family, the group of yellow jackets. And now we're tossing in birds and flowers and bees as competitors and predators and food sources and things like that. So we're looking at those interactions. And anytime I start talking about these interactions, I want to think about how it affects the population. And so we're going to see a lot of population graphs here. And so let's see, I didn't really change this, but let's look at two simple interactions here. And so we'll do this one first. The interaction that we're talking about is competition. So two species removed two species use the same resource. That would be competition. So like we can imagine like lions and cheetahs or something like that. And if we have maybe like a population right here, and let's say that this is the population of lions, and so that's going along in steady. And then we also have the population of cheetahs. They use the same resources, the zebras, the gazelles, whatever it is. And let's say for some reason, they're going along nice and steady. Maybe there's a little bit of up and down because of random births and deaths, things like that. Something happens to the cheetahs, maybe a disease. A disease comes along and it wipes out a whole bunch of the cheetahs. And it does something like that. When cheetahs are still around, but they're around at a much lower level, well, if you remove the competition, then we would expect at the same time to see the lions increase because you've taken away something that is using the same resource. There's more resources for their offspring and all of the lions to consume, and so their population would go up. That's how I like to think about community ecology. How do these interactions affect the individual populations? Well, we can look at another simple interaction, and that would be predation. The predator species feeds on the prey. If the predators are removed, then prey increases, but if prey are removed, then predators decrease. And so you actually get two very different things here. So we might try to do both of them. So let's say we are using our same example here, a similar example. We have the lions and then we have the zebras, okay? And so in this example, let's say a drought comes along and the grass doesn't grow as well. And so the zebra population decreases. Well, if there's less zebras, that's less food. And so of course the lion population is going to decrease as well. But it doesn't work the same way in other directions, because if we were to go along and say, okay, a disease comes along and it wipes out, for whatever reason, the lions, well then without as many lions there, then the zebras might go up. And so you do get different kind of results depending on what causes it. So you have to think about cause and effect and how will these populations be affected if we change this interaction in some way. So again, I like thinking about these graphs. You have to look at the graph, you have to think about the graph. And there was a graph on the quiz, and there's going to be a graph on the test. I'm sure of it. So okay, let's clear those and look at a couple of other interactions because there is another group of interactions that, if you guys can see this, this is called symbiosis. Okay, so symbiosis is a group of interactions, and sim is one of your root words. It's going to mean together right there. So if we wanted to define symbiosis, it's a little bit difficult because it's lots of different things, and there's not one great definition, but essentially you could take two species and they live together in an interconnected life strategy. Okay, they can't be separated without affecting the other. And this is a closer life strategy than like a predator-prey relationship, because those, I don't know, they're just not as close, I guess. So, and so my example, one type of symbiosis would be parasitism. And we can shorthand this with a plus-minus interaction, because that means one is benefited, that's the plus, and one is harmed, that's the minus. So the parasite lives inner on the host. The parasite benefits usually by using the host as some sort of a food source, and the host is harmed in some way. And that can be as simple as like mosquitoes and ticks on a dog. But it doesn't have to be. It can be something like a bacterial infection, like a staph infection or something like that. And we would consider that to be a pathogenic infection, because I'm gonna kind of compare that to things over here, okay? Now, if we were to graph this as well, and this works better with like don't think about like one person or one dog with, but if we happen to have something like dogs, and if we happen to have the population of ticks right here, and then if something were to happen and the tick population decreased well, then we would expect, because you removed the parasite, the dog population over time to increase because there's less disease spread, there's less harm to the population of dogs, and so if you get rid of the parasite, then the host is better off. So now we can change that to mutualism, which is a plus-plus interaction. And in this case, both of the species are going to benefit. And that's why we would call it a plus-plus. And our example here could be the birds on a hippo, if you remember, if you've ever seen like those birds that kind of hang out on the back of the hippo and they eat the insects on the hippo. They're removing a pest, but they also get food. There's lots of examples of mutualism or mutualistic interactions. The bacteria in your intestines, they live in there and they help you digest your food, and they provide vitamins for you. Vitamin K specifically is made by the bacteria. And I'm using this one specifically to point out the difference between pathogenic and beneficial bacteria. Those are major different things. But let's see what would happen if we were to say take a population of people, and if we have the people, Homo sapiens, and if we have their beneficial bacteria right here, and if for whatever reason, maybe overconsumption of like antibiotics or something like that, if you get rid of the beneficial part of a mutualistic relationship or symbiosis, then the other one is also harmed like that. And so this works on like an individual level, where a person can become sick if they lose their good bacteria. And it works on like a population level, where if everybody loses, or if every, I don't know, if one of the mutualistic species is removed, then the other population is hurt as well. So, okay, so there is one other way that you can have this interaction, and everybody says, oh, it's a minus-minus. Well, why would a minus-minus interaction happen? Like, there's no reason. And when we get to evolution, like, there has to be a beneficial advantage to one of these interactions forming. And there wouldn't be any benefit for anyone having a minus-minus, so they just wouldn't do that. It wouldn't evolve. And so we call this one commensalism. And so in this example, it's a +0. One benefits and the other is not affected at all. Okay, so there are a few examples of these. You guys hopefully watch the video on cowbirds. I'm not talking about cowbirds and warblers. That would be a parasitism. But cowbirds and other birds like them feed, and specifically like cattle egrets, they feed off of insects that are disturbed in the ground by like moving cattle. Think of a herd of buffalo moving through a field. And then after they do that, all of the little ground insects and maybe small lizards and mammals and things like that are disturbed from their homes. And then these flocks of birds will follow along behind them, and they will consume those insects. And so if we have these two lines of the buffalo, and if we have the egrets, well, if the buffalo are removed, then the egrets are also going to be harmed, because that's where they get their food source from. But it doesn't work the other way around. If the egrets are removed for some reason, maybe, who knows, whatever it is, global warming, changing weather patterns, and they don't migrate in the same way anymore, whatever. But if the cattle egret birds are gone, the buffalo are not affected at all. And so you have to once again think about the interaction and how it might affect them. So those are how we think about community ecology. There's two other things that we need to kind of discuss before we finish up community ecology, and that would be the idea of succession. Ecological succession explains how the community can change over time. Okay, and so this is actually a picture through time from left to right. This is a long time ago on the left, and then on the far right, this is like would be like today, right? And so at the very beginning of this time on this, think of it as an island, we have a land emerges. Think of a volcano emerges, and so we can call emergence the formation of brand new land. And when brand new land appears, whether it is due to volcanoes or earthquakes or whatever it might be, then there is nothing alive on it at that point in time. But you do get life eventually. On these rocks, you get things, lichens, small mosses, seeds that can float, seeds that birds can drop, whatever it is. And we call that primary succession. Primary succession is when you start to see life show up on this environment. And so the beginning community would be very, very simple. It would be, like I said, lichens, I struggle to say that word, and mosses, but they are going to cause erosion on that island. And that's going to, the roots are going to break down the rocks, and then the organisms are going to die. And we're going to get soil. That soil will have organic matter in it because of the dead mosses. And then we're going to get what we call secondary succession. The formation of soil, and you can see the soil is getting bigger and deeper and more. That allows other plants and now animals to show up, because now if you have enough plant life, then you can have herbivores, and if you have herbivores, you can have carnivores and decomposers and all these kinds of things. And so we get secondary succession taking place. And at the very, very end, we get the climax community. And I want you to think about what's happening here. Where would biodiversity be greater? Do you have more biodiversity at the beginning, or do you have more biodiversity at the end? And hopefully it's very, very clear to you that there is lots of biodiversity here because of all the time that there has been to grow new things in these shade-tolerant trees with grasses and shrubs and animals and plants and birds and all that kind of stuff. And the other thing, aside from biodiversity, is biomass. The total mass of all living things in that area is very, very high, because they have had, like I said, time to grow and have a diverse community show up. You can go back to here, and that would be returning to that secondary succession stage. And that would be like after a forest fire, where all the little grass seeds will sprout really, really quickly, and then the trees will start to grow really fast. And so that can happen, but you really don't go all the way back to like emergence. That just takes like new land. So, okay, the last thing I want to talk about with this is an idea called eutrophication. Okay, now we're going to get these terms later on. Eu means true or normal, and troph means energy. And this is a defect to the true normal energy that would be there in an area. So let's look at my picture. I have a corn farm here, and we have downhill from that, we have a lake, and there's fish in this lake. Okay, so eutrophication is going to mess up the energy flow and mess up the community. Okay, all right. First thing happens, we over fertilize the cropland. We want to make more corn, so we fertilize. And if you're going to fertilize, it's easier to give too much than too little. You'd rather do that so you can get all the corn you can get. The problem is fertilizer will run off when it rains, and it will run downhill in the water, because that's what water does, it goes downhill. The fertilizer causes an algae bloom. That means the algae are going to grow really, really fast, because we just gave them a lot of nutrients, specifically nitrogen, that they need in order to grow, because that's what most of fertilizer is. It's a few other things too, but mostly nitrogen. When the algae grow fast, they die a lot too, because they're little single-celled organisms, and so they're going to die. They're going to grow and they're going to die. They're going to grow and they're going to die. Well, we just put a lot of new dead organisms in here. And that means we're going to get decomposers in the water that are already there, but now they're going to kind of do a lot of their work. They're going to decompose a lot of that algae, and they're going to use up all the oxygen, because decomposers use oxygen to do their job. And that means there's no oxygen in the lake, and that means the fish die. So this entire community, which we'll see next notes, can be represented by like a food web, has been like messed up, all because we kind of threw one of the organisms out of like its balance, I guess. And so it really is a kind of like a messed up food web here. This is a picture of a eutrophic lake. You can see it's bright green, and you think, well, that's good. Well, it smells probably like death. It smells like a rotten fish, if there were fish in there in the first place. And it's going to eventually turn brown. And it's not a good thing to see that, because, everything is going to die. So that is eutrophication, and I believe that is the end of community ecology. So I'm going to switch over to the assignment today that'll be posted with this, and it is called random sampling. Okay, I always do this in class, and I have two of these. One of them won't work on the computer, one of them will. And we're going to see if all of this ecology stuff requires population, like knowing the population, then we need to figure out, like, how do you actually know a population? Like, how can you figure that out? Do we really know populations of organisms in the wild, or do we do our best to estimate? Turns out we estimate. And one method is called random sampling. So this is a field of sunflowers, and we are sunflower ecologists, and we are curious, how many sunflowers there are. Right now, we don't have time to count all of them, so we're going to have to do our best guess to estimate with this technique called random sampling. I have two methods you can do. Okay, you need to follow these procedures, and you'll use paper, and you're going to tear it into 20 slips of paper. You can see I did this, so I can show you an example here. 10 of them are labeled from 1 to 10. You can see this one says 10 on it. 10 of them are labeled A through J. This one says J on it. And hopefully you can recognize, oh, this goes 1 through 10, A through J, and every square represents a grid. And so this would be E5, and this would be G6 right here. So, and then you're going to randomly select these. You can use a cup. It's what I would do in my class. You can just put little piles on the table, and you're going to pick. And you're going to pick something like, randomly, I'm going to pick, and maybe you guys can see this. If it doesn't mirror it, I'm not sure. This is G9, okay? And I go up here and I say, all right, G9. Well, there's 2 of them right there. So that gives me 2 in that little square. Okay, so you're gonna do that, and you're gonna do it 10 times, and there's a really good data table down here that'll show you. I even already did the first one for you. F6 has 2. You're gonna do it a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th times. Put your grid right there, put your numbers right there, and if you follow the math here, add them up, get the average by dividing by 10. That's the average per square. Well, you got 100 squares, so multiply by 100, and we're going to get an estimate. That's your estimate. Then you got to count the sunflowers. Just count them by hand, okay? You might be 1 or 2 off, that's fine, but count the sunflowers. I know exactly how many there are because I've done this for years. We want to know how good your estimate was, and that's where we do something called percent error, and you'll see this formula quite a bit. Percent error measures a difference between 2 things, in this case, our estimate and our actual. It measures that difference as a percent of the actual, okay? And so percentages are scaled out of like 100, and that's just what a percent is. So we need to get the difference, estimate minus the actual, do that first, order of operations, do that first, okay? Divided by the actual times 100, multiply by 100 at the end right there, okay? We want to see how accurate it was. And then we've got a couple of questions right here. After that, and this is a little bit of a longer assignment because we're getting into some labs and we're hopefully used to this, I have some model questions. These are kind of other population distribution things, and you're going to answer some questions by looking at that, and then you're going to do some math again because I try to get you to do math as much as I can. And so you're going to calculate the area, the number of individuals, and the density. Density is a measure of amount in a space. So the first habitat has an area of 4 kilometers squared. By the way, that's going to stay the same for all of them. There's 31 individuals. I counted them by hand. And if I take the number of individuals divided by the area, I get 7.75 individuals per kilometer squared. Okay, little fractions like that, or little slashes are the same thing as a fraction, which is the same thing as a division problem. And that's one of the things that I try to get across to y'all during the year is how to, convert between these numbers. And I do want this in decimal form. Do not leave it as a fraction. This isn't a fraction math class. We use decimals in science. And you got a couple of questions about that idea, the general idea of population density versus population distribution and how that might affect the population. So, okay, so that is your assignment. It was maybe a little bit of a longer video, but we're getting into the end of a unit and we're getting into some lab stuff. So hopefully all this made sense. Remember to come see me during the synchronous time so we can go over this and I can help with a lab. So I'm just going to have a lab open during synchronous and we can work together on it. So we will be meeting in person a week from the day that you guys watch this. At least some of y'all will, depending on the schedule. So hopefully y'all are having a good day and had a good weekend, and I will see everyone this afternoon.